Radio Mano Papachango.
Hello, Chris and fellow Tangentialists. This is Sean Zinowich, reporting in, calling in, saying hello from the beauties of Interstate 5, headed north towards Portland. I'm on the last leg of a trip, moving back to my hometown of Olympia from the wonderful city of Houston, Texas. And you've been following me along the way. You all have. And for that, I am grateful.
Hello, Chris. Me and my mate Matt are just sitting by a fire. We're in the UK, we're in Cambridge. And we've just been having conversation for the last 4 hours, and we've been talking about everything that's kind of interesting us and challenging us in our lives at the moment. And the one thing that it keeps coming back round to is your podcast and how your podcast and like the people that you have on have given us the language to be able to explore the things that are like challenging us in our lives right now.
Hello, Chris. My name's Matt, and I've got to say, your attitude on the truth has been a truly transformative experience, and has made me significantly more confident in myself and accepting myself, and identifying as bisexual and being more true to myself, and continue on this path of pushing into discomfort and developing myself as an individual, thanks to your words. And thank you for everything that you got to say.
Yeah, that's it. In a society that is lacking mentors and kind of teachers and people that are comfortable with talking about anything, listening to your podcast has definitely opened both of our eyes, and like it's brought us closer. And yeah, thank you for everything that you do. Leave it there.
Hello, Chris Ryan and all the Tangelistas. What up? My name is Alita. I live in California, and I just quit my job, and I feel so fucking good and empowered and honestly lucky that I have the privilege of actually quitting a job that I was compromising myself to do. Anyway, I'm fucking feeling good about quitting my job. It's the middle of the summer. Bees are buzzing, blooms are blooming, and I would just like to say that I'm a single woman, and I am ready for my regenerative farming love story. So if you're into this, if this sounds good to you, Tangentialistas, get at me. I am at Alita Bloom on Instagram. I'm not scared. All right, thank you so much, Chris Ryan. Thank you. Thank you for creating this awesome community. Thank you for keeping me company in my ears, many late nights up on the farm pulling tarp as we do. And thank you, Tangentialistas. Much love.
Wow, that one took a turn, huh? Alita Bloom. I don't know what my legal obligations are here. Please be nice to Alita Bloom if you do reach out to her. It's ALIDA BLOOM on Instagram. Sometimes I'm very tempted to sort of set up a dating service somehow here, because I hear from so many people who are frustrated by the same things. I'm sure I've talked about this before on the podcast, this sort of, there are no women who are looking for guys like me. And then I, hear women who are like, there are no guys like the guy I'm looking for. And it's like, I just got an email from him. In fact, I just got an email from somebody who's like a guy who, I think he said he has a business teaching people how to do regenerative agriculture in urban settings, and he was offering to hook me up with a greenhouse in Colorado, and like within an hour ago, I got that email from that guy. So might be your dream dude there, Alita Bloom. And thank you, Guys by the Fire and Dude in the Car. I get a lot of these things from people in cars, and it's awesome. And I get it. You're driving down the road and you're like, oh, maybe I'll record that thing for Chris. And that's really great. But the road noise, sometimes I'm afraid to play it because I don't want to blast people. I know a lot of people are listening to this with earbuds, and you're just sort of tooling around in your garden, pulling tarps or whatever you're doing, and then suddenly you've got like this booming road noise going on. So I'm not sure how that comes across on your end. I hope I didn't blow anyone's ears out with that. Anyway, this episode is with the fantastic Daniele Bolelli. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. It's a co-release. I stopped at his place in Ojai, 6 weeks ago or something, when I was going through that part of the country, and we recorded this and agreed we would co-release it. So if you listen to Daniele's Drunken Taoist podcast, you might hear this same conversation there. Daniele, of course, also is the host of the wildly popular History on Fire podcast, where he recounts historical situations ranging from Crazy Horse, the Lakota warrior and leader, to the slave revolts in ancient Rome and all over the place. He's a badass historian, is, I think, the moniker that's been bestowed upon Daniele. I am back in Crestone, Colorado at my buddy Justin's house. The summer trip was 2 months. We were in Idaho, as I mentioned in the last episode, by the river there, the Payette River, I think it was called. Beautiful place. But the smoke started coming in, and we have some things to do down here. And then I'm not sure. The plan is to go to Europe and spend a couple months in Spain. But this fucking Delta variant is getting crazy, and we're vaccinated, so I guess the chances of any sort of hospitalization are extremely low, and death very, very, very low. But I'm not sure I want to be on a fucking airplane for 15 hours right now. I never want to be on an airplane for 15 hours with the coughing and the screaming and the farting and just the whole, like, fucking humanity. Too much humanity in one place, So I don't know. Well, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. We might end up just hanging in the van. The limitation is I've got to be in Vegas in November. I'm going to be giving a talk at an event called Meet Delic in early November in Vegas. If you get my monthly newsletter, you've seen mention of that and the ad down at the bottom. By the way, if you don't get my monthly newsletter and would like to, it basically just sort of says what I've been doing, whatever's been on my mind, and talks about some of the episodes that I've recorded this month. You can sign up for that at my website, thatchrisryan.com. You can also support the podcast there if you're into it. I am so bad at advertising myself. I really should do it more, because I do notice when I mention it, people go and sign up and support the podcast. So a lot of people are willing to. They just don't know. I guess they need to be reminded, or I don't know. But the income from the podcast has been steadily dwindling. And I keep saying, I should pump it up. I should tell people and talk about it and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's weird to try to do something, try to monetize something when, your basic philosophy is that money is necessary, but, it's something that becomes toxic and quantities. Not that I'm anywhere near approaching high quantities, but I might have to write another goddamn book. I don't know. We'll see. I was also thinking of another thing. You know, I've mentioned before that upwards of 10% of whatever I make from this podcast, I pass along to people who need it more than I do. And, you know, that's been friends and family and people I meet on the road. And I don't talk about who they are because it's, you know, it's not that kind of thing. You know, like, hey, I gave $2,000 to so-and-so. And they're like, what are you telling everybody? But I was thinking it might be interesting to recycle the money that you guys send me, you know, maybe, I don't know, 10% or something to people in the podcast community who need it. This is an embryonic idea. So if you think of a good way to do this, let me know. Because I'm still trying to think it through. I mean, I don't want it to be like, oh my God, I can't pay my rent this month, so send me money. I mean, that's a worthy cause, but I'm thinking more of like, you know, someone who's trying to raise a little money to kit out their van, or they're building a tiny home, or, you know what I mean? Something that's going to be an investment that's going to pay off over time. And I was also thinking, rather than, I mean, I don't want people writing, you know, applying and then being disappointed when they don't win or whatever. So I was thinking maybe it should be like not for you, but for someone you know. You know what I mean? So if you wrote me the email, it's like, listen, you know, I have this friend and she's in this situation, and you know, $500 would really mean a lot to her right now because it would enable her to do this and, you know, pull herself out of that or whatever. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. So maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I'm just like setting myself up to piss a lot of people off, which is the opposite of what I would like to do here. So if you have any ideas, let me know how to handle that in an intelligent way that's not going to piss everybody off. I read an article recently that I keep thinking about. I think it was in The Atlantic. It was written by a climate scientist who studies ancient, it's like geological time, the climate over geological time. And I have to admit, my breadth of historical awareness goes back a few 100,000 years to the advent of anatomically modern human beings. And previous to that, I start to get lost in the mists of time. Like right off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you if the Earth is, you know, 1 billion years old or 5 billion years old or 500 million years old. I get lost in those very big numbers. But anyway, this article was about what the Earth looked like at different points of time, and with kind of related to the carbon content in the atmosphere. And the point of the article that this scientist was trying to convey was how urgently we need to get carbon emissions under control, because the last time the Earth had this much carbon in the atmosphere, it looked like, I mean, there was fucking jungles, you know, covering Antarctica. There were alligators in Greenland. You know, all these fossils are coming up showing how steamy and hot and humid and uninhabitable for anything like a human being the Earth was at various points. But I ended up sort of coming to an opposite conclusion in a strange way, because what I came away from this article feeling was that the Earth is this living, changing, erupting, flowing adapting organism that we happen to be inhabiting at the moment, like fleas on an elephant's back or something. And we are the sort of premise of a lot of the environmental urgency is that there's a stability that we're disrupting. And what I got from this article was that there is no stability. There has never been stability. There are periods of apparent stability that can last 5, 10, 15,000 years. But beyond that, you start to see recurring changes and cycles that happen, ice ages that recur every 10 to 12,000 years. If you look at the last 200,000 or 300,000 years, there's been this recurring rhythm of ice ages, and we're overdue for one right now. So we've been in this period in the last 10,000, 12,000 years, which signifies the advent of agriculture, of course, and everything that we know as far as technology and what the world looks like. This is a very recent and extremely brief pause in these massive shifts. If you have listened to Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, they've been on Rogan's podcast. They've talked about these asteroid events that trigger this massive floods and global changes. The Yosemite volcano has erupted 2, 3, 4 times, and that we can see, and every time it's totally changed the climate of the planet. The Toba eruption, which was about 70,000 years ago, killed almost all people on the planet in the course of a year. The ash just changed the planet. All the plants withered. There was no food. The animals died. There's a coating of ash all over the planet that relates to that. So these things happen regularly. The shit hits the fan over and over and over and over again. And so it's a weird place to be, but I'm almost feeling like this idea that we are destroying our environment, it's true, and I'm fucking disgusted by the plastic in the ocean and the radiation, the nuclear reactors that just get dumped off the side of fucking aircraft carriers into the ocean as if you can just throw things away and they disappear. I'm disgusted by the lack of respect that we have for the planet and the other inhabitants of this planet. And yet, when you look at this situation over geological time, the premise of stability is gone. It disappears. There is no stability. In fact, I don't know if this is scientifically true, but it occurred to me while I was reading this article that maybe the reason the next ice age hasn't appeared yet is precisely because there's all this extra carbon in the atmosphere. Maybe the cycle, the 10 to 12,000 year cycle of recurring ice ages has been disrupted by our, inadvertent intervention. Because otherwise, according to the patterns, there should be a mile thick layer of ice down as far as central France, Holland, under ice, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, England, totally under ice. Not to mention Canada, Alaska. So, I don't know. It's left me in a weird place. It's kind of like, Newtonian physics has this presumption of stability. The Earth is here, it's stable, you drop an apple, it moves toward the center of the Earth, that's it. And then along came Einstein and said, no, everything is moving all the time. Everything, space itself is moving. And so these relationships are much more complex than we think. And the rules of cause and effect are nothing like what we imagine in a three-dimensional Newtonian perspective. Anyway, I'm way out of my depth here as far as knowledge and study goes, but I do think that things are much more complicated than we know. And that, whether we get carbon under control or not, which clearly we're not, the climactic shit will hit the fan over and over and over, wipe the slate clean, as it has done repeatedly since the existence of this planet. On that happy note, I'm going to play you out with a song that was written especially for me by a guy named Jack Stafford. I was on his podcast a few months ago. It's called Pod Songs, I think. He's an interesting cat. He sort of writes songs the way, other people drink a beer. He just sort of like has a guest on his podcast, and then based on the conversation or whatever it is that guest is known for, he'll write a song. And they're good. They're good songs. Interesting. I encourage you to look them up on YouTube. There's a really funny video he did about, what is it? It's like about going to the bathroom, or his girlfriend going to the bathroom or something, and toilet paper. And it's better than it sounds. It's very irreverent. Anyway, this song is called Civilized to Death, and it's by Jack Stafford, and his podcast is Pod Songs. And then you're going to hear my conversation with the great, the one and only Danieli Bolelli, a guy that I really love. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for supporting it. This is the part where I should be asking you to send me money, but I'm not going to do it. It's just implied. See how meta this is? This is very meta. All right. Thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. And let me know what you think about that idea of sort of cycling some money back into the Tangentially Speaking community, is if there's a clean and easy way to do that that won't piss people off. All right. Thanks. You're civilized to death. Catch you later. Okay.
So then I was playing this video game where there's like you're Japanese, the Mongolians just invaded, and you have to defend the island. And at one point, she's like attacking this Mongolian camp, and there are the Mongolians doing throat singing. I'm like, don't attack them. Let me finish the song at least.
Do not attack us.
Yeah.
I'm here with Danieli Bolelli in beautiful Ojai, California. Yeah, we were talking about your sauna. I did a podcast in a sauna once.
You did a podcast? I hope it was like a 3-minute podcast.
No, it was at least half an hour. It was with Neil Strauss and Gabby Reese.
We are hardcore, man.
Yeah, they call it the Truth Barrel, and they co-hosted this podcast for a while, and they would record every episode in the sauna.
Jesus.
The only weird thing is, where do you clip your mic?
I can think of places, but yes, that could be uncomfortable.
It's a little far.
Yes.
Yeah, so
how hot did it get?
It was pretty hot. I mean, it was, Truth Barrel. You're hot.
Damn.
I used to have those same chairs.
Yeah.
Those are good. Those hammock chairs. Yep. Anyway, hi. So wait, did we decide, is this my podcast or your podcast?
We haven't figured it out yet.
Both?
So it may you guys may be listening on both, on one, the other, who knows?
So you're still doing the
Drunken Taoist.
The Drunken Taoist.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the name of the other one? The history one?
History on Fire.
History on Fire. All right.
I just released actually a couple of Bruce Lee episodes. A whole biography of Bruce Lee.
That must have been fun.
I had his daughter Shannon do the introduction, which was sweet. She's always been super cool to me, so that was fun. And so enjoyable. And it's not a bad life. Let's put it that way.
So I remember back in the day when we were just starting out, the joke was everyone's going to have a podcast someday.
Right.
And now it's everyone's going to have 2 podcasts.
Right.
Like I'm the only guy with 1 podcast still
really?
At this point, probably.
But
yeah, I mean, it seems like people do their old standby podcast and then they do some sort of specialized thing Anya has 2 podcasts.
That's cool. How is it even like? How do you think? I'm not keeping up. I'm not paying attention. But like, what's the deal? Is like, because last I checked, the overwhelming majority of podcasts they didn't even get their own mom to listen, kind of thing. So I mean,
I don't
there
want
are
my mom to listen.
right. There are 3 zillion podcasts, but most of them run for 10 episodes. Then they're like, screw this, nobody listen, and it's work, and then they are done. Is that still this? Because I would imagine that with the numbers growing, there's only so. I mean, even if the audience is growing a bit, it's not growing that much to the level that to support that many podcasts out there.
I don't know what's happening. I mean, there seems to be money. Companies are giving you money.
Yeah, I like that.
They're not giving me any money. They're giving Rogan money.
Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be money around, and I'm getting, I get approached by publicists, so-and-so has a book and blah, 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 all that all the time. And now I'm starting to get approached by publicists for people who are starting podcasts. So they want to promote their podcast on my podcast.
Of course.
Which is, back in our day, like I did yours, you did mine, Duncan did, Joe, and everyone sort of was doing each other's, which was a good way to do it. But now, as you say, I don't know if there's enough audience to go around. So having people on to promote their new podcast, like Reza Aslan and Rainn Wilson are going to be doing a podcast. And I talked to their publicist once to get them on mine. It's like, so, okay, now I have to deal with like best-selling authors and the guy from The Office.
Right. I mean, it's inevitable in some way. It's inevitable because it caught on, and like anything that becomes somewhat mainstream, of course, then, and it's cheap. It's easy to set up. It's easy to...
capital investment's low.
Exactly. So,
I just wouldn't have thought there would be enough money in it for people like that.
For the majority of people, there isn't. For many people, if you're making a bunch of money in other ways, they will do it as a publicity thing.
Right.
It's kind of like they are not making money on it. They don't. If they make money, it's great, but it's an extra. It's more a publicity thing because your publisher wants you to have something, so you have the right numbers and all that kind of stuff.
It's like a form of social media almost.
Pretty much. And then, because when you look at the numbers of how many people actually make money with podcasts, it's a minuscule percentage of the total.
Yeah.
It's I would bet that in any one genre, if you are past the top 2% in terms of audience, you make next to nothing. And even in the top 2%, there's a humongous gap between the 0.01 and the rest.
So it's like the American economy in general.
Yes. That's kind of how it is.
10% of the top 1%.
Yeah.
Good for you. Otherwise, you're fucked.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should do some sort of podcast wealth redistribution. We should, demonstrate. Are you willing to do that, Danieli?
The wealth distribution of podcasting.
You're definitely 1%. You're a 1%er.
Yeah, I don't know for how long, but as long as it works, I like it.
A friend of mine from Colorado, this dude, funny dude, really good friend of mine, but he's not rich, far from rich. In fact, he's an apprentice electrician at this point. So he's putting in his time at really low wages so that later he'll get licensed and he can open a company and all that, right? So the guy's anything but rich. He comes to visit a friend in L.A. a couple weeks ago, and it's her birthday. He takes her to dinner at some restaurant, nice restaurant, but I'm sure not, super nice, but nice restaurant. Nice meaning expensive. And they're sitting at a table outside. She goes to the bathroom. He's sitting there. And some dude comes up on a bike and starts screaming at him, calling him a 1%er. Fuck you, 1%er. Fuck you. It's like this guy.
You really have any idea. Yes.
I'm getting trashed for being rich. I'm spending like all the money I've saved up on the appetizers here, and you're giving me shit.
And even
calling me a 1%er.
And even then, if the guy's nice and he's got money, who cares? Good for him. If he's not nice, that's I don't like the thing where it's about plugging people in one big, broad category, whether it's an ideological one or an economic one or anything. It's like, not everybody's the same in that group. You know, whether you're talking about religion or politics or economic.
Race.
It's like there's a humongous difference between this individual and that individual. And you trying to put everybody in the same group, you're just a lazy bastard. Just get to know
Yeah.
individuals.
But is it possible to get to individuals, right? Isn't this a cognitive issue where, you know what I mean? We can't constantly be assessing things from the beginning, so we develop shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's sort of unavoidable. I think it's a question of scale. Because you're right, obviously, and we all know everyone's different, everyone's an individual. Do you remember the scene in Life of Brian?
Yeah.
Where...
I know which one you're going to say. Yes,
it's one of my favorite jokes
it's
ever.
Hilarious.
So everyone's following this guy around because they've mistaken him for the Messiah, and he's just fed up because everyone's following him around and hassling him. And there's the scene where he's making love with his girlfriend, I think, and he gets up and he opens the shutters, and there's like a throng of people. Oh, there he is. And he's like, oh, God damn it, leave me alone. And he yells at them. He's like, what's wrong with you people? Can't you see? You're all yelling the same things. You're all, you're in a cult. You're all individuals. You're all different. And they say, we're all individuals. We're all different, which is already a good joke, right?
Yeah.
And then one guy says, I'm not.
Oh man, that scene, I actually thought you were gonna mention it before. That scene is great. There's another scene in there where they have the guy who's like, we are the Judean People Front, and the other guy's like, but we hate the front. I forget the exact names, but they're basically like these identical names that are
the
all
front
like
of Judean people,
Jewish revolutionaries against Rome.
Yeah.
And they absolutely hate one another, and it's like,
yeah.
and it's hilarious because that's how it is, right?
The
It's like-
fractioning of the left.
Oh yeah.
How are you going to do it? But I'm often perplexed by the idea that the same people who are really upset about racism, rightly so.
Sure.
Racism is a big issue, but they are the same people who say race is not a real thing.
Sure.
So it's a real thing or it's not a real
Right.
We're upset about it, but it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you can try to spin it together is the idea that no, in reality doesn't exist, but because you, dumb bastard, decide that it exists and you act like it because you're a racist asshole who argue that it's real, then you're making that something that's real that really isn't.
Yeah.
That me trying to bend over backwards, trying
Yeah.
to reconcile the two. But I think that's the logic. But ultimately, in all of these things, race, ideology, religion, it pisses me off because I always feel like it's a real lazy way to approach life. It's a real, like, what we think is a shortcut is actually makes the whole thing way more complicated and way harder to have real communication
Yeah.
because you're not dealing with the reality of a person in front of you.
Right.
That person in front of you is the embodiment of something that exists in your mind as an idea, and you're projecting onto them whatever you think they represent. And the person, I mean, some people fit stereotypes to a T, right? So those do exist. But there's a ton of people who don't.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes I feel like it's hard to tell the difference between laziness and exhaustion.
sure.
And I think a lot of people are just so overwhelmed by life. And sometimes it feels like that's by design, right? First of all, let's cut funding to education. Let's make education more like respect authority than learn to think critically. Because the
Right.
last thing an authoritarian institution wants is true critical thinking, right?
Sure.
Because they'll call bullshit on you, which you
course.
don't want. And then, the fucking minimum wage hasn't gone up since 2009.
That for sure.
You're in debt. You're fucking working your ass off just to survive. So who's got time to really, or energy to be generous? It's really, and so sometimes I get angry at people for their laziness or their lack of generosity or their, shitty shortcut thinking. But then I also think, like, yeah, a woman probably has 3 jobs, 2 kids, husband's left.
Sure.
Am I going to blame her for her ignorance?
No, but at the same time, no, you don't blame the person for the ignorance. But then when they turn it and use that same exact approach to somebody else who also has 3 jobs and is dealing with this, it's like, the same way we don't do it to you, don't do it to other people.
Yeah. So is compassion a luxury?
Well, but that's where I feel that, you're 100% right about current conditions encouraging certain trends, for sure. But I also feel that it really predates that. That is kind of like a virus of the human mind, that once you move out of the small-scale community where you know individuals, that's just how almost everybody who doesn't really make a point to pay attention to this stuff and check themselves all the time defaults to that because it's easy.
Right.
It's,
well, yeah. I mean, I feel like we're back where we started, right? With the question of, is this something we can actually avoid, or is this just the reality of living on a scale of population in which we cannot know each person as an individual? Just can't do it because there are just too many of them. So generalizations are the only way to...
Okay, but humor me. What's so hard? And I'm asking it as a rhetorical question, but also it's not. It's really like, maybe there's something I'm missing here. But what is so hard about just resisting that tendency to think in abstract terms, of thinking the left wing, the right wing, the Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, the whatever the hell, like, rather than acknowledging the fact that these things are largely stereotypes, much like the same way as a race is a stereotype, that you think, oh, all those guys with that skin color, they all act this way.
Right.
All Christians are like this, all communists are like this, all these are like this. And you plug everybody. First, we shouldn't do it to ourselves. Like, I don't want any of those fucking labels where I'm supposed to live up to the idea of what this thing is. Fuck that. I want to be me.
The great Italian lover?
Yes.
You don't want to live up to that?
Well, but that's me. That's not a collective thing.
Okay.
That's like
that's
very applied to the
you're
individual.
who they're talking about all this
exactly.
time?
Yes.
All right. I thought it was Fabio,
Oh,
but it was
fuck
actually
that.
you.
Yes, absolutely. But like, seriously, like, what's so hard about resisting that tendency of saying, you know what, I don't want to play that game. I want to deal with specific situations and specific individuals.
Well, isn't it? I mean, I know this was maybe partly a rhetorical question. So
no, but it's not. No, I actually do want to have the answer.
I mean, it's like you need to define the words every time you talk, right? It's you need to start at zero, and just. I think it's just too difficult. There's too much. There's too much going on. It's easier to say that group of people tends to be like this. Right? These countries tend to be like that. These cultures, desert cultures, tend to be violent.
Tend is already better because you're allowing already for exceptions. You know what I mean? You're saying, as a general rule,
well,
I've seen
that's
that
how I
happen.
generalize.
I like that. That I can live
Give
with,
yourself
right?
a little wiggle room.
That works because you're saying, look, that's my experience.
There are
I've seen this time and time
right.
again. But obviously, I'm not even saying it's everybody, or maybe it's not even the majority. Maybe it's a solid number, but it's not even the majority of people who fit that.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's all right. What I don't like is the use of these terms, and I guess this is a very Taoist concept, right? It's like first line of the Tao Te Ching. It's like the moment you can speak about it, you're already departing from reality, right? It's exactly what
you've slapped a term on it. Now it sticks to the term.
Yep. And so, to me, all these discussions about whether they are political, whether they are religious, whether they are about any of these kind of big, broad categories kind of stuff, I feel that, like, the second somebody say, oh, because the left, like, shut the fuck up. You're already wrong. Like, I don't want to hear what you're going for. Or the right, or it doesn't even matter which one they are picking on, right? But it's like, when you're starting to create this abstraction out there, I feel like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, talk about something that's in front of you, that's right there, that means something, because there is no such thing as the left or the right or Christianity or Buddhism. There are 10 zillion people with, like, that's actually my standard line when I would teach history of religions. On day one, my first thing would be like, there is no such thing as any of them. There is no Christianity, there is no Buddhism, there is no Islam. What there is there are 2 billion people who fit in one of those particular labels, and they don't agree with one another about pretty much anything. You know, the only thing all Christians agree on is Jesus is cool. That's where it ends. Past that point,
Well, even then, you could say there's not a lot of agreement because they can't decide who Jesus was.
Precisely. So
did
you have
Jesus
one that's
help
a god,
the poor,
that's one,
or did he dislike the poor?
Right?
Yeah.
But they like the name. They like the name of Jesus.
My Jesus.
Yes.
Was cool.
So
yeah.
to me, it's like I apply this to everything, right? To politics, to any of these things where we get trapped talking about things that are beyond what we can reach and touch, kind of thing. I feel we go into very dangerous territory because the road from a useful generalization to a ridiculous stereotypes that have nothing to do with reality there's a really thin line there.
What about going the other direction? Is there a danger of over specification? You know what I mean?
Sure.
For example, no, maybe I'm, old school, but I feel like there are ways to say things like most men tend to be X, most women tend to do Y.
I think the way you phrase it is the sweet spot.
Right.
Right. That's the way where you can still use some generalization because they are useful.
So what's happened? Like Anya and I talk about this a lot. Her father's gay. And so she was raised in a family with a gay father, straight mother, openly gay.
Sure.
Very kind of open-minded about gender and sexual behavior and orientation and all that. And when we talk about trans people, I don't want to get you in trouble if this is an area you'd rather not go into, but when we talk about the whole trans thing, if I'm understanding her position correctly, she's kind of frustrated saying like, okay, wait, you say gender's not real, but you want to change your gender.
Sure.
It's kind of like the racism thing, right? If it doesn't exist, how are you locating yourself within it? And so it's like, why can't you just be a woman with these appetites? You're a woman who likes to dress like a dude sometimes, and you're into women most of the time, but sometimes into men. You don't need to become a man. And then the sort of orthodoxy is a trans woman is the same as a woman. And that's just obviously not true to me. Now, again, maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy and I don't get it, and, you kids in your music. But to me, it seems obvious that someone who was born in one body and transitioned to another is different from someone who was born into that body.
That seems pretty straightforward, right? That seems like, at the same time, you know what it is about this, like take a topic like this, right? The whole trans thing or multiple gender ideas and all of that. It's like, how many people talk about it? It's in the news all the time. It's a constant topic of discussion. I'm like, how many of you motherfuckers ever interact with somebody who's trans?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
Overwhelming majority of people don't.
Yeah.
I have, like, my personal knowledge is so ridiculously limited.
Yeah. Me too. Single digits for sure.
That whatever I say is bullshit because I'm talking about something that's not within my realm of experience. So I'm just like, I find the wind behind all that discussion, both the people who are pushing it pro, the people who are against it, the people who are this. If you just leave it to the people who's actually part of their experience, either because they directly are or people who are family and friends, and then, that would probably be a healthier discussion than getting 30 zillion people on board on a discussion about a topic that they don't know shit about.
Well, but that's the nature of our day. That's because everyone has a podcast.
Right? But
what are we going to talk about?
But that's my point. It's like, how about you talk about the tomatoes in your garden, or you talk about how you raise your kids, or you talk about the shit that you actually know and have experience of. Or if you talk about stuff that's more out there, be creative. Don't get into arguments about real stuff of which you have no experience. You know what I mean? Because that's a boring game. You know what I mean?
Well, but isn't that the game of politics, of sports? I mean, isn't that what everyone's doing all the time? Like taking a position on something they don't know anything about?
It's a fucking stupid game. Like, same thing, right? Like politics. It's like, I don't want to talk about politics in the abstract.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that one issue. I think that would make things better. Why don't we do that? Oh, you don't think so? Well, let's look at the evidence. That to me is a way to talk about politics that makes sense. Right? It's very specific. It's
not identity.
It's not identity based at all. is just about that one issue. That one issue is not tied to, oh, since you believe this about abortion, then you clearly must believe this about mask and this about global warming and this. No, fuck that. Let's look about one issue.
Right.
With the fact that I don't even care if whatever I'm thinking when I start is what gets done. You know what I care about? That we find a solution. That everybody is happier by the time we are done with that discussion. That I care about. I give a fuck if it's my way or yours or a hybrid in between. Is like, that to me is, it's an ego thing, you know. It's like, it's not about really wanting to find a solution. It's about me wanting to flex the muscle and say, you see, I was right. My idea was the correct one. It's like, are you really that in need of affirmation?
Yeah.
To me, those things are about finding solutions. Of course. Unfortunately, that's the answer.
So let's go deeper there. Is it just the availability of social media that's created all this arguing all the time? Or was this animosity always there and this is just a place where it's channeled now?
I tend to go for the latter. And I tend to think that, of course, I mean, it's not just that simple to say it was always there and this is a channel. That also the channel amplifies it, blows it out of proportion, turn it into something that's 100 times bigger than it was to begin with.
Right.
But that need for identity, I think, is something that human beings across the globe have killed and have been killed for I can't even go how far back do we go in time, for lots and lots and lots of generations. Right?
So do you think that the collapse of institutional group identity as religions or, you know, all these institutions have collapsed recently in terms of their, you know, viability and respectability. So that's left people with free floating anxiety around group identity.
100%.
Yeah.
I think
it's a good time to start a cult.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to play that game, it's an easy game to play.
Yeah.
If you are halfway smart, you can kill it. You know.
Did you hear about there's some Indian dude who came to America and pretended he was a guru and he was just fucking around.
I love that.
And he ended up with hundreds of followers.
Of course. That's how it works.
It's
an easy game. Yeah. I mean, because when you think about it, it's very easy what people crave.
Oh, he needs an accent, Daniele.
I think I got that covered. I think I have the wrong one. I think I can do well in the lovely lady seduction department, not so much in the starting the
O show.
Yeah,
you got to get a beard.
Yeah,
you're halfway there.
I'm halfway there, but I also need a different accent. I need something. Well, you know what? Most people can't tell one apart from the other anyway. So
you're foreign. That's enough.
Yeah. No, but I think, I mean, and I get it, because the need for, like, let's backtrack a second. Why the need for identity? Why is it that people crave so much to belong to something? To me, a lot of it is the fact that life is fucking scary.
Yeah.
That is,
that's what I was going to say. They're afraid.
In a dangerous, scary universe in which we don't know shit about the big questions of life. We don't know if you existed before you were born, if anything is going to happen once you die. I mean, think about it. We are around for a dot in time compared to the thousands and thousands of years out there. That's stressful shit. Existential anxiety is real, and I think that existential dread is something that people fight with dogma. Having some kind of dogma that delivers all the answers, that reassure you, that make you feel like you're not alone. We all believe this shit, so that means it must be real, and you got it covered.
I'm going to take your picture while you're talking here. With the, we've got the sauna in the back.
Nice. Good deal.
All right.
And,
yeah, I think it's the existential fear, but I think there's also a very practical level fear, which, you know, what we started out talking about. People are working desperately to survive, can't pay the rent, can't afford to live in the neighborhoods where they work, can't raise their kids. You know, if they get sick, they lose their house, they lose everything. They're very practical fears in the United States, at least, for sure. And the lack of community combined with the lack of governmental assistance. You know, in Mexico, you've got community and family, or, you know, Italy, you've got a combination. But here it's like there's no safety net. So people are terrified and instinctively, we have always felt that other people are our salvation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the hunter-gatherers, I got your back, you got my back, we'll be okay. Either one of us alone is just food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's a strange time, man. It's a fascinating but strange, difficult time.
'Cause to me, exactly what you lined up, right? So community, that's important. Housing, food, eating good stuff, making sure your kids are taken care of. Those are real things.
Yeah.
Spend your time addressing those things. How can you create a community in the lifestyle that you have around you? Do you have 2-3 other families close to you that you can be kind of create a close-knit type of thing?
Right.
Can you figure out a way to grow some food that's healthy in your backyard or wherever the hell it is? Can you those are very real issues with practical answers. They are not theoretical weird shit. They're very practical answers. Spend 95% of your time on that stuff. And then if you want to spend time up in your head, you do it creatively. You watch cool movies, you listen to cool music, you do those things that kind of feed your soul in a pleasant way. Rather than fucking argue about transgender bathrooms, you know what I mean? It's like, really, that's where you want to spend your time, where it has nothing to do with your life.
Right.
And it's like,
but that's what fuels it, right? It's people online saying, I'm with the people who believe this.
Yeah.
That's my tribe.
yeah.
There's
And by the way, none of those
tribes.
people are going to be, because
They're
you're
not
not a
gonna
real
come.
community.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
not a real,
Yeah.
like your real friends or anything.
Right.
It's purely an online posturing game.
Right.
So,
But it does scratch that itch. But you're right. It's like junk food for the spirit. It makes you feel like you have a community, but you're more alone than ever because you're ignoring the people next door. You know?
Of course. And I fail at this game so bad every time with the community thing, because anytime for last few years where in the circles we roam around, there has been a bit of a hard right turn among a lot of people, where there's been, like, there are a lot, I don't know if it happened to you, there are a lot of people who started following me back in 2012, 2013, who by now they are like 1 inch away from white supremacist kind of thing, where the turn has been from, I'm open-minded and I like to smoke weed, to becoming, I'm kind of libertarian. Well, okay, that's fair. And then, no, I'm a little harder on that. And now I'm a hardcore ANCAP. And now capitalism is the way. And now, fuck you, homeless. I need to shoot you in the head because you are ruining my neighborhood.
Fuck.
That stuff, I've seen that happen. I can't even tell you how many times I'm on the people. And I would always check, like, who's this person? I'm like, somebody who started looking at my stuff 8 years ago or 9 years ago or something. And then I see this really hard, dark, very right-wing turn, right? And then I look at, then I'm like, then the left is where I feel more comfortable. And sure, more comfortable, but that's a relative term, because then you hang out a little in, like, leftist chats, and you're like, you guys are just as fucking you annoy me less, I find you less dangerous, but deep down, in terms of your psychology, you're just as fucking crazy as those guys. You're just as dogmatic.
It's all authoritarianism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's very like, this is what we believe, 1 through 15. And if you believe in only 14 and a half of those things, you're a traitor to the cause, and we need to line you up. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so I feel that I'm like, the way I'm built, I cannot fit anywhere. Because even with the people that I do check most of the boxes, the second I'm actually hanging out with them for too long, I'm like, I'm out. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
This is not my thing.
I've never been comfortable in any group. I've never... even people I agree with make me uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Like Burning Man, I probably line up with most of the values, or hippies, or Grateful Dead fans, or whatever. I've never found a group where I'm like, these are my people. Like, my people are all weirdos like you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's exactly my experience. Where it's like, why is it that we agree on 95% of the official policy ideas kind of thing, but I'm not comfortable around you kind of thing, where there's that feeling of like, somehow we check the boxes, but it doesn't really address the fact that at a deeper level, nope, there's not a whole lot there that we have in common, and I don't ultimately trust you kind of feeling, where there's that feeling of like, to me, even though you're saying all the good stuff, I sense a tendency toward dogmatism and being ultra judgmental of anybody who doesn't fit in the box that disturb me, even when it's my box.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I thought of myself as sort of a neo-hippie, you know, eating mushrooms and traveling around the world and, you know, I don't care about money, man, you know, and listening to Hendrix and the Beatles and whatever. But when I would, you know, I often had this experience of sort of hanging out by a fire in Thailand or something, and there's the white dude with the dreadlocks, and you know, he's barefoot all the time, and just having him kind of look at me like I'm the, you know, you're so straight, dude. Like, and he doesn't know anything about me.
Of course.
I have short hair and white skin, and he's making all these judgments. And it, you know, I would often think, like, if you were in Germany in 1935, you'd be a fucking brown shirt, right? You're just a follower. You're not cool. Cool is you're not following anyone. Cool is you're doing your thing, and you're not judging, and you're cool. Like that, I had a girlfriend once, beautiful, wonderful woman, young, 10 years younger than me, and we moved to San Francisco together. She's a Spanish chick. We moved to San Francisco, and one day she said to me, I want to be a hippie. And I was like, cool, what do you mean? Like, you want to get high or something? Or she's like, no, I went there. I saw this store, and they sell these clothes. I'm going to be a hippie. And he's like, oh, you mean you're going to dress up like a hippie, like for Halloween or something? Like, that's not being a hippie, woman.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. I love that one.
Yeah,
it's a tricky beast. Because at the end, you go back to the individual. You have to go like, the way you travel around and do mushrooms, I like it. The way that other guy travels around and does mushroom, I don't. Why? You guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's different.
Because there's a whole different energy that you bring to it, a different attitude, a different, ultimately everything, even though the surface looks the same. And I think all the labels are created on the surface. We have the same politics. We have the same religion. We have the same this. Then you dig like tiny bit below and it's like, no, it's not the same.
Yeah.
You guys may be using the same buzzwords, but your worldview is radically different, actually.
Yeah,
down.
And the motivation that underlies those decisions can be totally different.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you teach your daughter about this stuff?
I think exactly like what we're doing. Just you sit
just
around,
talk it out.
You talk it out, and you go into why does this work, and have these discussions. And she's interesting because I always had these discussions with her from the get-go. To me, if she's putting words together, we can talk about anything, right? And it's surprising because the only thing you got to remember is, okay, they have less experience and they have a smaller vocabulary. So you have to explain certain words and you have to acknowledge the fact that the experience is not there. So you have to kind of walk them through it a little more. But other than that, and I don't know if it's because that goes to kind of that nature-nurture thing. Like, I don't know if she was kind of a particular human being to begin with, and that's why I was able to have this conversation, or if it's because I was having this conversation that she became that human being. It probably is a mix of both, right? But like, I had discussions with her about, take any topic, the most wild topic that people will go like, oh, we're going into this deep thing. I would have this conversation with her at 4 years old, right? And I wouldn't feel like I was talking to myself and I'm just sharing, I would feel like she got it. She understood. She not only got it and understood, she offered insight that I didn't think of. And I'm like, you got a good point. Why do I feel that way? Yeah. Let me think it through because I don't know the answer. Let me figure it out here. Yeah. And so we would have this discussion. Recently, there was a friend of mine came to visit and my daughter and him started chatting, and I was doing something else. So they were out here chatting, doing their thing. And later he was telling me, it's so trippy because I'm in that conversation and I completely forget that she's 11 years old because it's like, it's a conversation with my smartest 40-year-old would be exactly like that. But then I go in the house and I turn around and I see Barbies everywhere. And then I remember, oh, she's a little girl. It's like that. Yeah. So there's this weird juxtaposition of like, no, she's a kid. At the same time, no, she's not, and she hasn't been at all in the way people think of kids for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. My father always used to love to tell this story of an experience he had with me like that when I was, I don't know, 5 or 7. I don't know how old I was, but we were driving in the car, and I asked him where trees came from. And so he explained seeds falling in the dirt and the rain and the seed sprouts and the new tree comes out of it and all that. And I was just sort of sitting there for a few minutes quietly. And then I said, where did the first tree come from?
Of course.
He was like, oh, you little fucker.
Yeah, of course. That's a good one. And
he always said, like, that's when I started taking you seriously. Like, okay, you're throwing shit at me that I didn't see coming. And his attitude was like yours. It was like, okay, he was humble. He wasn't like, I got all the answers. Shut up.
No, of course.
It was like, oh, let me think about that. I don't know. And honestly, I think for a kid, that's such an empowering experience to ask a question that you're, the font of all answers says, I don't know. I'm about to learn something while I think about that. Thank you. Holy shit.
100%.
Adults are taking me seriously.
Yep.
That energy goes right through to, having the confidence to write a book, to teach a class, to whatever, to think
Absolutely.
you have the right to stand up in front of a bunch of people and say something. It's like, well, it's because my dad took me seriously when I was 9,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's
cool.
exactly... I don't understand how other people do it, because to me that seems so natural and normal. Like, how else would you communicate? But I do understand it's not common. But, especially in her case, like, her mom died when she was 1.5 years old, right? So, of course, you're going to have discussions about topics that are both heavy
Big.
and complicated very early.
Right.
Like, she's going to be 4 and is like, okay, but what happens after somebody dies?
Right.
Where do you think she is? Or what do you... And, of course, clearly you don't have real answers to that. You can say, look, nobody knows. But at the same time, this is what I feel. This is what my experience has been. And this is why I have an inkling that there may be something having to do with this. But of course, at the end of the day, I don't know. And what's your feel? Have you had dreams? Have you had, what's your gut instinct? What's your...
Right.
Because your gut instinct is as good as any answer you're going to find anywhere, from the top
Especially-
religious authority to
Right.
anything else.
Especially with little kids,
Yeah.
where it hasn't been contaminated
Yep.
with nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah. How would you be different? Have you thought about how you would be different if you'd never had a child?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, because before having her, I was perfectly happy with where I was in the world. I didn't feel like I need to have a kid to be validated or something. At the same time, having her now is such a huge part of who I am that is like, oh, damn, yeah, I can see how that would be a radically... It's strange, because a lot of me would be the same, and a lot of me would not be. And it's both elements are there at the same time. And it's so hard to separate, because it's like I can look at both sides, but I can't look at both sides at the same time and bring them together,
Right. That makes sense.
But it is, I mean, one thing that's interesting is that people sometimes talk about kids like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever and blah, blah, blah. Now, I am super happy of having her. I feel is like one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. At the same time, are you kidding? It's brutally hard in multiple ways, in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of testing every one of your buttons of patience. And like, there are moments where, especially when she was little, as she grows up, it's so much easier every year. But like when she was really little, there were so many moments where I felt like the mirror just was brought up right in front of my face, and I really didn't like what I saw in there. Because I was like, are you seriously yelling at that 2-year-old because she spilled milk? Is that where you're at? Is that where, because you are so, like, your handle on your stress, you keep it together in, like, adult situation, but somebody does some dumb shit that you're responsible for, and now you just are yelling and losing your mind?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
you're a piece of shit. Whatever you thought about yourself as being great, this and that is... and so that was... humbly did a way I did not particularly enjoy multiple times.
It must have been, I mean, for you, though, it was compounded, right? Because you were dealing with that, but you were also dealing with grief.
Yep.
I imagine you're still dealing with grief. That you must look at her sometimes and see her mother. And
yeah, that's a trippy one right there. Like
crazy.
The grief aspect is something that, people talk about grief as a process.
yeah.
I don't get it. Because to me, it's like my emotions don't really change over time. The shit that wrecked me at one point in time, if I put my mind there, wrecks me just the same. It's not that somehow I'm immune to it or I've grown to find a resolution to any of it, or I just feel like eventually, just because you're more used to it, it comes up less. But that's about it. It's like I don't feel that I have this key that suddenly I have these emotions that back then screwed me over, but then I did this process and I understood and now I'm at peace. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't know how people do it, but I'm like, no, the shit that bothered me 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago, if I put my mind there, still bugs me now.
So it's a question of now you have the choice whether to put your mind there or not.
A little more. Whereas, of course, in the initial thing, your mind is always there, whether you want it or not. But my dad died a few months ago in October. Man, I think about it all the time. Like every day, nothing changes. I don't feel like, more months have gone by, you feel better about it, or it's less. I don't. Yeah. So I'm fascinated by people who manage to, who have a process, who somehow can kind of move through stages or whatever it is. It's like good for them. Like I'm not saying it like, you guys are all full of shit. It's not my experience, so you guys are wrong. By all means, I'm happy for you if that's the way it works for you. Just not how it works for me.
Right. It's all about how it's framed. Yeah, my dad died almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in September. And I often think the same thing. It's like it's not like metabolizing or digesting a meal or something where it just
it's like, okay, now we are over it.
Yeah, took a shit and then sorry, Dad, done. It's not like that. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. For me, it's like he's present in my consciousness. I don't know. I read someone said that grief was a way of keeping people alive.
Sure.
So and grief is a weird word because grief to me implies sadness and heaviness and darkness and despair, that kind of stuff. Whereas there's almost a lightness to the grief I feel for my father, but it's still grief.
Right.
In
which way? Like what's the lightness?
Well, because he was a funny guy.
Okay.
And he was very much about enjoyment and singing and laughing and having a good time. And so, part of my memories of him they're very much tied in with his laughter and his enjoyment of life. So I miss him, and there is a sadness there, but his echo
is a happy.
Yeah,
that's interesting because, like, the fact that you're able to do that, because even cases where I can think of the same thing, like there's the vibe is a happy one, is a loving one, is a good one. The fact that I know I never get to experience that moment again, the fact that I never get to be in that room, hearing those sounds, having that dialogue, seeing those expressions, all of that, still fucks me up.
Yeah, but I get that, but I feel like for me, it's like he got old and sick before he died, right? Sure. So that guy that I'm remembering, the laughing, singing, good time dude, the last 10 years he was alive, he wasn't there.
Right.
So even if he were still alive, I would still never be able to go back there. I would still never experience those things again. So in effect, it's like, when does someone die? Like, you and I might say goodbye this evening and not see each other for 5 years. When we meet again, we're not who we are right now. Sure. So did we die? Or another example, more concrete and kind of more disturbing in some ways, is 5 years from now, if I get advanced dementia and we meet and I don't recognize you, is this still me?
Sure, right.
Am I alive?
Of course.
It's a weird...
I think that's because for me, the overwhelming majority of people close to me who have died have not died like that. Who are like my grandma died. She was like 96 or something. She had been not in a happy place for at least 4 or 5 years. So I'm like that. I still miss it. It sucks. There's a sadness, but there's also an element of like, okay, I get it. That's the process. He was kind of over already. I'm relieved she's gone because she's not dealing with all the crap she had to deal with. So there still is that element of missing something of the past that's never coming back. But there's also, I guess it helps you make peace with that process slightly more. Whereas with so many people who I remember them a year before and they are like ridiculously full of life and a year later they are gone, it doesn't compute in my brain. It just doesn't add up where it's like, no, there was that energy, was strong, was there, was all of that. How can you go from point A to point B with such a narrow time frame? You're just like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't add up. And of course it does work. That's the way life is. But it just psychologically doesn't allow you to kind of make your peace with it a little bit at a time when they are still alive, right? Where you accept that idea a little more and then you're like, oh, if they died, it may not be the worst thing in the world for them. Or I actually wish it for them because this is getting ugly. And you don't have the time to go through that process.
And I very consciously went through that feeling like he's gone already.
Right.
So when his body dies, it won't be the day he died. It'll be the day he stopped dying. Yeah. So what about you? If you had a choice, would you rather, let's say the same age, let's say 80 or whatever, would you rather just go to bed and not wake up, or would you rather be diagnosed with an illness and go through the process like, okay, you got 9 months to say goodbye
by
and
all
think
means,
about things?
Go to bed and not wake up. That's, I think, the sign me up right now. It's like that sound good. Not right now, literally, but like right now, if we can make an appointment,
happen to have the
if we can make an appointment for like when I'm 80, we're good. That sound good. Because.
But what about the wisdom that can be gained from the experience of knowing you're dying?
Fuck that. I thought about it my whole life. I don't need to think about it 6 more months with extra pressure and fear and fuck that. No.
What about suicide? How do you feel about that?
Never bother me because I'm just like, look, that is a personal thing, and it's like only you know what you're going through. And my standard attitude, even like when people would like people who maybe have been voicing being suicidal around me, I was never the guy who's like, no, think about how good life is. Like, I don't fucking know. You may have every good reason in the world to kill yourself right now. However,
go for it.
No, my thing is in fact let's make a deal. Do me a favor, just to make sure that that's the right choice. Give it 6 months. 6 months is not the end of the world. You go through 6 months in a second. It's like, if in 6 months you still, like, let's try to do some things to make your life better that you're telling me already that they are never going to work. That's fine. It's okay.
Maybe
I accept it. Maybe
they
probably, let's say they won't. But give it 6 months of time anyway. If you still feel that way in 6 months, okay, we could have that conversation. But just give it a little time. Because...
It's... what's the saying? It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, maybe your problem is not temporary. Maybe but let's find out. Let's find out if you don't feel different about these things down the road, or if.
And also, life is full of surprises. So if you're feeling like everything's fucked, it's not worth going on. Well, why not just see?
Yeah.
Right. Why not wait and see? See what happens. Something awesome could happen, and also. I mean, I don't know. What am I talking about? I mean, people who are suffering from, serious clinical depression or, terminal diagnosis or whatever. That's, as you said, we don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's very personal. But, I do feel like when I hear from young people who write to me sometimes and they're feeling hopeless and, it's funny. I don't know. You're in your 50s, 40s?
I'm 47 right now.
47. Yeah. I'm 59. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. The older I get, the more it's a strange phenomenon where I don't know, there must be a word for it. When you're close to it, it's harder to see, but the further away you get, the more. So I look back at my 20s now, and I realize how deeply uncomfortable I was. And how that discomfort was compounded by the sort of global assumption that everybody in their 20s is living the best years of their lives, and you should be so fucking happy. You're young, you got your whole life ahead of you, your body's strong, and I'm like, I'm lost, I'm confused, I feel like I'm fucking things up, I don't know how to make decisions, I don't know who I love, I'm afraid to let go of this person because maybe I'll never find anyone like them, but I need to move on, and it's so sad to leave people behind, but I need to go forward. And there's all this. I look at people in their 20s now, and I just feel so much compassion for them. You know, it's so. I mean, maybe your life is turning out really well. Some bumps, some tragedy, clearly. My life has turned out way better than I had any right to expect. So, maybe things don't turn out well, and then you look back in your 20s and you say those were the glory days. But certainly in my case, I look back and it's like, wow, it's so much harder not to know how things are going to turn out than it is, again, this is my case, to say, oh, this is how they turned out. Cool. I'm not a superstar. I'm not a millionaire. But I never aspired to be those things.
Right.
But I'm generally satisfied. I've got love. I've got enough money to live on. I got this great job where I talk with friends and people send me money. Send me money.
That's a good setup. I
you people who aren't sending me money.
Yes.
How are we going to guilt trip them into it? How dare you listen to this without sending us money?
Damn it. Yeah, no, man, I'm with you.
How do you monetize your podcast? I mean, I know you get, the one is a commercial deal, but the Drunken Taoist, you have
Drunken Taoist,
Patreon,
kind
or
of
what?
don't. There are a few people who donate. That's sweet. Then you've got, a few companies that you get not even money. You usually get like deals where they send you cool products or
sex
like,
toys.
Yeah,
in my
basically, you're like,
case.
hey, that works.
Sex
That's
toys,
nice. That's But so Drunken Taoist is more of a fun hobby.
It's a passion project.
Yeah. It's cool. It's fun. It's like, and also in terms of time investment, is not that much. Whereas History on Fire is brutal time investment, but also pays off. Both now because I'm under contract with Luminary, but even earlier I had between Patreon and ads. I would have a good chunk of ads initially, and people would bitch about it. I'm like, dude, fast forward, motherfucker! It's the only thing I need.
Yeah,
that's what I need to live on. So if you can't fast forward by 7 minutes of ads, tough shit. That's otherwise there's no podcast.
Do you do mid-roll as well?
No, that's the only thing I would not do. I would do
fuck.
beginning, and so I would have a long stretch at the beginning. I'm like, dude, you don't want to do it. Patreon, $5 a month. There are no ads.
Oh, so you got an ad-free version.
Or you can do it just fast forward 10 minutes if you have an ad obsession that you hate them so much. And so that was, History on Fire. It's funny that way too, because like I don't understand success because I've done like 10 million things in my life, and most of them have either kind of work like that's decent, or no, that really didn't work. And then like something like History on Fire hit it in a way that changed conditions in my life quite a bit, and I'm like, I don't know why that one worked.
So how do you replicate it? It's impossible.
To me, it's like, I don't want to be, I'm like the opposite of the grind porn of people are like, work hard and you will succeed. I'm like, it's 85% luck, and then there's something you can do about it in between. But like even History on Fire, I love it. I think I do create something awesome with it. But do I even think it's the best thing I've ever done? No. I think there are other things I've done that are way better, that I've never had 1/10 of the success. That's life.
It's a mystery.
You throw a bunch of seeds out there, and
Some
one that
sprout.
grows is not necessarily the one you think it was gonna grow.
It's not even the one you were watering
No,
necessarily.
it's like, look at that.
It drowned the one I was watering.
Yeah. So it's an interesting trip that way.
Yeah. Do you know I'm sure you know the concept of wu wei.
Yeah.
Trying not to try.
Yeah.
I was talking with a guy this morning about that. Tony Gonzalez, a NFL player, really interesting, really smart guy. But we were talking about that, how like as an athlete, as a musician, as an actor, as a lover, as a dancer, whatever. It's like there's a time to learn the moves, put in the work, and then he was saying like, he had a very concrete example. He's like, look, a guy like me, I'm just gifted, right? I was just born.
Right.
I can jump high. I can run fast. I can catch things. Hand-eye coordination. I got it all, right? Sure. So high school, boom, I'm the star. Yeah. College, boom, I'm the star. Pros, I'm not the star anymore.
Everybody else has the same thing.
Right. And all those guys are phenomenon. Yep. All those guys have gone through life being the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. And then you get to a level, the highest level, where you're not the best anymore, dude.
Of course.
You're just one of the guys. And he said that's the first time as an athlete of his caliber, that's the first time it's no longer about your body. Now you got to get into your head. Now it's about how you think about it. It's about how you finding the zone. And so it's not about acquiring new stuff. It's about letting go.
Right.
And we were talking about how that's so sort of universal. That's like I was talking with my uncle last night, Uncle Dan, who's been on this podcast. And Uncle Dan is like, he's an old man with no fucking teeth, and he still picks up women. He's amazing.
Right.
And the key is that he is openly appreciative. You're a beautiful woman, but he's not trying to get laid. Right. He doesn't want anything. He doesn't care. But he is openly appreciative, and women respond to that because like, oh, this guy doesn't have an agenda. He's just a nice guy, and I like the way I feel when he looks at me. You know. There's something about letting go of expectations that invites the thing into your life.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to learn.
It is, because it's like the universe is fucked up that way. It's like the more you want it, the least you're going to get it.
Dude.
And the more you're relaxed about it, that's when it's like, wait, what?
The hornier you are,
yeah,
the less likely you are to get laid.
Absolutely.
I mean, you go out to the club with a rubber in your pocket, you're not getting laid.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I feel that like escorts are goddesses of mercy, because I'm like, that's the only guarantee where it's like, yes, you are paid, you are gonna get laid, in some cases with absolutely fantastically beautiful, sweet women. And so suddenly the whole psychological process of like, oh, I want this so bad and it's not gonna work, suddenly it's not there anymore, because it's like, well, that can happen literally anytime you want, provided you don't get arrested along the way. But other than that, it's like, and so now if it's something that can happen anytime you want, suddenly it's not that stressful of a thing anymore, because you're not thinking, oh my God, I really want it, I can't have it kind of thing. Now it's like, oh, that's an option.
Yeah.
So now I don't have to approach every lady that I'm super attracted to with that energy. Where it's like, oh my God, I wish I did. It's like, nope. It's like, that's great. You're hot. You're wonderful. You're a cool person too. But do I need you? No, not like that. Yeah. It's like, it's great. I mean, if the stars align, that's how it works. Wonderful. But it doesn't. And so suddenly when you don't have that, like your uncle's example, when you don't have that needy energy, suddenly it's 100 times easier. And you're like, wait, now that I don't care about it, it's so much easier. Wait, what?
That's the experience of getting older too. It's, again, in my 20s, I was so fucking horny, but it wasn't just horny. It wasn't just, body. It was. I look back now and I see. Do you want to pause?
No, we're good.
That it was a hunger for intimacy. It wasn't just about sex.
Sure.
Because I never had a problem jerking off,
sure.
I never had any shame around masturbation or anything like that. So it wasn't that. It was just like I was living. My life was really beautiful and interesting, traveling in beautiful tropical places, and being alone. It felt like it was like not having a sense of smell in a great restaurant or something. It's like I'm only perceiving part of this. What I need to be with someone I need to add love to this, and then it would make sense. And I could never do the escort thing, even in Thailand. I was in Thailand for lots of months, and I could never hook up with a Thai girl, even though it would have been so easy. And
Sure.
Because for me, like I said, it wasn't about the sex. It was about I need to feel that she wants to be with me. And if there's
that's
money
an
involved,
extremely common thing, of course. You know
it
what
just feels.
you know what's interesting for me is like that dynamic to me is when is not purely about sex. It is about sex, but it's not purely about sex. There is a little of that, but not in the sense of, oh, you need to love me, which is like, let's be real, we are exchanging money for sex. That's where it's at. Is if it's something where it's like, look, we can be really, clearly a transaction, but we can be really fucking nice to each other in a way where we can just have a really pleasant hour or two or whatever the hell it is with one another, where there's no illusion that there's, we know why we are here, but at the same time, it can be oddly pleasant to find a very decent human interaction in a context that people associate with anything but decent or good or anything. And it's like, I'll tell you crazy, like, I don't think I ever told you this one, like, first time ever I'm talking about it like I have not seen like 10 million escorts in my life. That's not been the scenario, but like first time ever I was in that situation was interesting because like I felt like, what the fuck am I doing? This is not me. What am I was scared. I was weirded out. I was curious enough to want to go there, but at the same time, I was like, this may be horror stories I've heard. It may be terrible, right? So I'm going a little edgy. And I meet this lady. God damn, so sweet. I'm just talking as a human being, like really nice, where we have this converse. At one point, after all is said, and granted, I understand that's her job to also make you feel like she wants to be there with you or hang out or talk or whatever.
Yeah, but some of that stuff can't be fake.
Some of the stuff absolutely can be fake. Then this, like, the part that really tripped me out, that played a number on my head, was at the very end when all is said and done. You're laying in bed naked, chit-chat, and she asked me things about my life. Now, that's a time in my life where everything has gone to shit in my life, right? It's as dark gets. It's, I forget how long, maybe a year after my wife died, something like that, right? Where it's like, I'm like, well, if you want to know, I'll tell you. And, so I kind of give her the spiel of what's up with my life. And she's like, you know what? Don't pay me. It's like, you need the money more than I do. I'm like, no, let's not be ridiculous. No, of course I'm paid. Let's not go there, of course. And now we're having an argument with her not wanting to be paid and me wanting to pay her. And we go back and forth, and I'm like, how fucking sweet is this? In the one environment where people think it's all about nothing but money and you would kill each other over 2 dimes kind of thing, we are strangers who are making that minimum level of connection where for that hour we're actually caring about each other. And I want to make sure that you get yours, that you're good, that you don't have to do, and that you are trying to make my life better. Like, for me, finding that element of just sweetness and decency in a context that most people would not think is where you're going to find it just make me feel good about life. I just felt good about humanity. I felt good about life. I felt good about a lot of things. So I was like, look at that. This is anything but what I would have expected.
If my personal experience is any indication, and I think it is in this area, I think a lot of women feel compassion and service intertwined with their sexuality. I've known a lot of women who have told me, look, if there were a way for me to have sex with guys who are lonely or guys who are sick or guys who are old or guys who are sad, if I could use my sexuality to make them feel better, that would make me incredibly happy. Society doesn't allow it, right? But with the Vestal Virgins, you know, there are traditions of this in different societies. And, or surrogate sex therapy, like I know a lot of women that if there were a way that they could use their bodies and their sexuality to help men feel better about themselves, they would. Unfortunately, the men make it really hard, and the society makes it hard. But I think the sort of cliche of the hooker with the heart of gold. There's a lot of truth in that.
Well, like all stereotypes, does it apply to everybody? No. Is it the majority of people? No. Is there a solid percentage in the minority? Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's how stereotypes are, right? And
you know Nina Hartley?
Yeah.
Porn star. Yeah. Last I looked, she had sex with more men than any other woman on camera.
Right.
I interviewed her for the podcast, and she started out as a nurse, and she was all about helping people, making them feel better, you know, helping them through tragedies and so on. And I don't remember the story. We can go. Anyone listening can go back to the archives and hear it. But I remember there was a direct transition from nursing to sex work in terms of, it's like to her it was the same thing. It's just another way to bring relief and comfort. Yeah, interesting world we live in, where we demonize some of the most beautiful, generous impulses we have and celebrate the dark. What the fuck?
And to me, in fact, that's what it's about, right? More than any other quality a human being can possess. Are you a kind human being? Can you show kindness to people when you don't have to, when it's not because you're going to get something out of it?
Right.
Can you show that? To me, in my list of priority, that's like number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we can talk about any other talent you may have, way probably out of the top 10 after we're done with kindness, like at every step of the way. I mean, even the thing we were talking about earlier with like dialogues with my daughter, where people hang out with her and they're like, oh fuck, she's so smart, she's so this. Like, to me, the fact that she's smart, I'm like, that's great, but I don't really care that much. I'm like, I'm glad you're smart. You can make life easier in some way, harder in others. So it's
it's a watch.
Yeah, you know what I care about? The fact that you're being smart, you put it at the service of being actually a really sweet person. That I care about, because now you're using something that could go either way.
Do you ever worry that by cultivating her kindness, you may be increasing her vulnerability?
This is where, to me, is fun. And that's where parenting, like anything else in life, is a yin-yang, delicate game of balance, right? Because at the same time, like a lot of the way she grows up is, we would watch Conan the Barbarian together when she was 5, and she's all about like, she I told her, because I never had the hard rules about what she can't watch, but like at one point when she wanted to watch Game of Thrones, I'm like, no, for one reason. You get really sad when you see good people suffer, and there's a fuckload of that in this, so how about we don't?
Yeah.
But like, so she wanted to just see selected scene of Arya Stark, because he's like this badass female character, and so she has a passion for fighting, revenge, toughness, assertiveness, and all that, right? Like the other day, like this is what I mean about the perfect Tao right there, right? So she's at school and she comes back and she's enthusiastic. Because like, what happened? I'm like, well, we got out of class, and she just finished 6th grade, right? The hallway was packed with 8th graders. And, we ask, excuse me, like she and 2 of her friends, they need to get to the class. And they're all like, fuck, 6th graders. So nobody moves. They're all packed in there. And so the 2 friends are like, okay, we need to run around the building and we can still make it in time, but let's run. And Isabella was like, no, follow me. And she started physically removing the 8th graders out of the way. Like, not mean, but also very firm. And they were also weirded out that nobody knew what to do with it other than letting her move them.
Yeah.
And so by the time they get through the other side, the other 2 girls are like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. My parents told me never do that, but that was awesome. And I was like, good for you. That's what I like to hear
lesson.
Both. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
If you are just that, I would worry, because you can become an asshole.
Right.
If you are just the sweet, nice kind, I worry because of vulnerability. If they are both in your tool set and you just get to choose which one you want to bring out, now I'm happy. Now I feel good.
and there's also a related insight would be that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is going to cause pain. So the kindness isn't just surface level sweetness. It's thinking like, you know what, I need to set a boundary here and I need to stick to it, and that's the best, even though you don't want me to, because you've got this immediate thing going on. Over the long term, I need this is the way it has to be. That's the way. There's like a, I don't want to say cruel to be kind, but certainly firm to be kind.
You need to have, it's a range, right? Why would you choose one or the other? You want to have the whole range of possibilities. And then when that situation calls for a particular tool, well, it's in your toolbox. You know how to handle it. Yeah, you can be firm. Or no, now you're going to be flexible. And that's the thing that I've hammered with there. I mean, that's the thing that I've hammered with myself or with any conversation. Like that topic of you want to learn how to be tough, how to be assertive, how to be strong in a classical sense, precisely for the reason that then you put it to the service of being soft and sweet and flexible and all that, so that those qualities don't become a weakness, but they go hand in hand with a deeper strength behind.
It's like what we were saying earlier about, the athlete or the musician who does the work to learn the chops, and then when you're on stage, you can forget all that and just flow. Because you got it. You did it. I feel that way. I don't know. Your relationship with martial arts is different from mine, but I felt like my motivation for studying martial arts when I was young was that I was afraid. And as I got older, especially when I started taking hallucinogens and traveling a lot and facing fears in other ways, I felt much less motivated because I found myself thinking about fighting all the time when I was doing martial arts. I was always thinking, like, someone comes this way, I'm going to do that. And this, if they have a knife, I'll do this and that. And I was like, man, I want to not think about fighting. I want to not be in conflict.
That's what I mean about not fitting in any group. Because it's like, I'm with you, right? I love that stuff. I'm into it. But then I'm around people who all they talk about is that. I'm like, Jesus, man, really? It's like, how about we talk about, hey, that's a nice orange that you got. You have a great orange tree over there. How do you go raise it? Let's talk about other shit. It's like the fun of doing that is to develop a tool, not to become 24/7 obsessed with that energy.
Right. Yeah.
But I get it.
Have you ever carried a gun?
No.
It's a weird thing.
I always have a knife on me because it's like you use it for opening boxes, whatever.
Making sandwiches.
So it's like, but yeah, I tend to go around with some rather scary looking thing. But
it's scary looking.
Yeah, but
you make sandwiches with that.
Yeah,
huh?
it could be. It's a multi-purpose tool.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
What has been your experience?
Well, it's just metaphorically. I had a thing where I carried a gun for a while, and just like. It changed the way you look at the world. It changes, the realm of the possibilities that one anticipates is different because you're thinking like, okay, I mean, I was in Manhattan, like, that guy just got on the subway, looks kind of rough. Okay, feel it there, feel it in my pocket, like you're...
Hammer, nail. Yeah, I have a hammer, so I see nails everywhere. Yeah,
on my belt. Yeah. Yeah, it's strange. Danieli, always so cool to hang out with you, man.
It's always fun.
By the way, Danieli didn't introduce me, but my name's Chris Ryan.
Oh, God damn it. I'm such a terror. Assuming that I am also host, we are not that clear, but yes. Fucking bad Daniele. Stupid Italian.
Daniele. Yeah. All right. So we'll figure out when we'll release this. Yeah, it's. I wish we lived in the same city, but I'm not moving back to LA. Not even for you, brother.
I can sympathize. I can. Man, even this is not LA. It's so much better, but I understand that there are many other places in the world where
I can't afford Ojai.
Really?
I love it. It's nice here.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, where I'm living in Colorado, it's not green.
Right.
It's high desert.
Yeah.
So you don't have I'm looking at, you've got roses and beautiful
that,
maple tree. Is that a maple tree there?
That one looks like it.
Something.
I think.
Yeah. All right, Danieli Bolelli. Check him out. The Drunken Taoist podcast and History
indeed.
on Fire.
And vice versa. We got Tangentially Speaking.
Yeah.
Among
Great.
other.
You pronounced it right. So many native English speakers can't say
What
it.
do they say?
Tangentially speaking?
That may be appropriate. That may be more appropriate than one would think, but
I don't know. My genitals aren't particularly tan, I got to tell you. I tend to keep them out of the sun. All right. Thanks for this one. All right. That was Danieli Bolelli. Hope you enjoyed that, and appreciate your time and your attention. I just want to remind you that these podcasts are up on YouTube now. At least audio. The ones that I record on the computer, virtually, have the video as well. This one with Daniele, I recorded in person, obviously, so it's just the audio. But they are up on YouTube. The channel is Chris Ryan, and you'll find all the podcasts there, the recent ones, and Mike Marr, who I've had on the podcast. I haven't posted it yet, but you'll meet him very shortly. He's been managing the whole thing, doing a great job. He's also going back into the archives and uploading selected podcasts from the archives at this point, and eventually I guess we're going to get them all up there, but Mike's in charge of that. So I really appreciate all the work he's put into this. So go over there, watch him on YouTube if you want. That generates a little ad in revenue. Mike and I are splitting that, so that'll hopefully compensate him for some of his time and effort. All right, thanks. Here's Mom and Carsey. Okay, Mom, tell people what they can order from the garage.
Okay, in our cottage garage, we have lots and lots of T-shirts. Sex at Dawn, Civilized to Death, Vanthropology, Tangentially Speaking, Paleo Modern, and Talking Out of My Ass.
She didn't like saying that last one.
Then we now have some new things added. We've got beer cozies, or koozies, or whatever they're called.
Oh, Civilized to Death design.
They're all civilized
That's right.
to death.
We have stickers and car decals, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. That's Julie, my mom.